The rain was relentless, a relentless downpour that showed no signs of mercy. Water splattered against the windows, and the storm outside was a fitting backdrop to the dread that had settled in my chest. I stood behind the counter at Cold Stone Creamery, an upscale restaurant nestled in the heart of the city. The restaurant was known for its decadent ice cream creations, and it was the kind of place that people saved up to dine in. But on this night, it was anything but a luxury. My name is Jake, and I was one of the employees working the late shift. The restaurant was empty, save for me and a few colleagues in the back. Our manager had decided to keep the place open despite the storm, hoping to snag a few late-night dessert enthusiasts. But as the hours ticked by, it became clear that no one was coming. The restaurant was dimly lit, and the soft, eerie glow of the overhead lights cast long shadows on the polished marble floors. The rain drummed a steady beat on the rooftop, a haunting reminder of the world outside. I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease, a creeping sensation that something was not right. I tried to shake off my nerves as I wiped down the counter. The glass display case, faced with colorful ice cream flavors and toppings, seemed to shimmer in the dim light. The scent of freshly baked waffle cones hung in the air, sweet and inviting, but tonight it held an ominous undertone. My coworker, Sarah, was in the kitchen, softly humming to herself as she cleaned up. She was a friendly girl, always quick with a smile, but even her cheerful demeanor couldn't dispel the unease that hung in the restaurant. The clock on the wall read 11:45 p.m., and we were due to close at midnight. I had just finished cleaning the counter when I heard a soft, melodic chime. It was the sound of the restaurant's front door opening. I turned, expecting to see a late-night customer seeking refuge from the storm. Instead, I froze in my tracks. A man stood in the doorway, his tall, slender figure shrouded in darkness. He wore a long black coat that was slick with rain and a wide-brimmed hat that obscured his face. Drops of water glistened on the brim, like tears frozen in time. "Welcome to Cold Stone Creamery," I managed to stammer, my voice shaky. The man didn't respond. He simply walked in, the door swinging shut behind him. He moved with an unnatural grace, gliding across the floor as if he were floating on air. His steps were silent, and the only sound was the soft, rhythmic tap of rain against the windows. I felt a shiver run down my spine as he approached the counter. His face remained hidden in the shadow of his hat, and I couldn't make out his features. But I could feel his eyes on me, cold and unrelenting. "Can I help you with something?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The man finally spoke, his voice low and raspy. "I've heard that your ice cream is the best in town. I've come a long way to try it." I tried to muster a smile, but it felt forced. "We do have some amazing flavors. What can I get you?" He ordered a scoop of vanilla, of all things, in a plain waffle cone. I prepared his order with trembling hands, the silence in the restaurant only broken by the rain outside. As I handed him the cone, he took it with a gloved hand, and for the first time, I caught a glimpse of his face. His skin was pale, almost translucent, and his eyes were a piercing shade of blue. But it was his smile that sent a shiver down my spine. It was cold, dull void of warmth or humanity. A smile that sent a chill into the very core of my being. "Enjoy," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The man nodded, his gaze never leaving mine, and he turned to leave. As he walked away, I couldn't help but notice that his footsteps left no mark on the wet floor. I watched him exit the restaurant, the door chiming softly as it closed behind him. I let out a shaky breath, my heart pounding in my chest. Sarah emerged from the kitchen, concern etched on her face. "Who was that?" she asked. "I don't know," I reply, my voice trembling. "But something about him. Something isn't right." We closed up the restaurant, the minutes ticking away like hours. The storm outside showed no sign of abating, and the rain continued to beat against the windows like a relentless drum. We were alone, just Sarah and me, and the feeling of unease in the restaurant seemed to grow stronger with each passing moment. As we finished our closing duties and prepared to leave, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I glanced at the security cameras, half expecting to see the mysterious man lurking outside. But the monitors were dark, the screens empty. "I'll walk you home," Sarah offered, sensing my unease. I nodded gratefully, and together we stepped out into the rain-swept night. The street was deserted, the city's usual hustle and bustle silenced by the storm. We huddled under Sarah's umbrella, the rain pouring down in relentless sheets. As we walked, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder, a feeling of dread gnawing at me. But there was nothing behind us, just the empty, wet streets. We reached my apartment building, and I thanked Sarah for her company. She hugged me tightly, and I could tell that she was as unsettled as I was. "Stay safe, Jake," she said, her voice full of concern. I nodded, watching her walk away into the rainy night. I entered my apartment, locking the door behind me. I tried to shake off the fear that had settled in my chest, chalking it up to a late-night encounter with a strange customer. But as I lay in bed, listening to the rain outside, I couldn't escape the feeling that something was terribly wrong. The image of the mysterious man's cold smile haunted my thoughts, and I couldn't shake the feeling that he had brought something with him into the restaurant, something that now lingered in the very air. I breathed. The next morning, I awoke to a sense of dread that had only deepened. The rain had finally stopped, and sunlight streamed through my window, but it did little to dispel the unease that had settled in my apartment. I checked the news, half expecting to see reports of a horrific crime or a mysterious disappearance. But there was nothing. No mention of the man who had visited the restaurant last night, no reports of anything unusual. It was as if he had never existed. I decided to head into work, hoping that a busy day at the restaurant would help take my mind off things. But when I arrived, I found the place in disarray. Tables were overturned, chairs lay scattered across the floor, and the glass display case had been shattered. I rushed to the kitchen, fearing the worst. Sarah was there, sitting on the floor, her face ashen. She was trembling, her eyes fixed on something I couldn't see. "What happened?" I asked, my voice shaking. She didn't respond at first, her gaze locked on the floor. Then, slowly, she looked up at me, her eyes filled with terror. "He came back," she whispered. I felt a chill run down my spine. "Who came back?" "The man from last night," Sarah said, her voice quivering. "He was here, Jake. He was here, and he did this." I surveyed the damage, my mind racing. The restaurant was in ruins, and there was no sign of the mysterious man. But I knew, deep down, that he had been here, that he had brought this chaos with him. We called the police. These arrived quickly, their expressions grim as they surveyed the scene. They took our statements, but there was little they could do. There were no fingerprints, no surveillance footage of the man. It was as if he were a ghost, leaving no trace behind. As the hours passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. The restaurant felt different now, tainted by the presence of the mysterious man. The air seemed heavy with his malevolence, and I could almost hear his cold laughter echoing in the empty dining room. The police eventually left, promising to investigate further, but I had little hope that they would find anything. Sarah and I were left to clean up the mess, a daunting task that seemed to stretch on endlessly. As we worked, Sarah finally spoke, her voice hushed and trembling. He said he came for the ice cream. But it wasn't the ice cream he wanted, was it? I didn't have an answer. I couldn't explain the terror that had settled in the restaurant, the feeling of impending doom that clung to every corner. Days turned into weeks, and the incident at Cold Stone Creamery faded from the public's memory. The restaurant reopened, and customers returned, unaware of the darkness that still lurked within its walls. But Sarah and I couldn't forget. We couldn't escape the feeling that the man would return, that he would bring with him more chaos and destruction. And then, one fateful night, he did. I was working the late shift again, unable to shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. The restaurant was nearly empty, save for a few customers huddled in the corner. The clock on the wall read 11:45 p.m., the same time the man had walked in before. And then, like a nightmare replaying itself, I heard the soft, melodic chime of the front door. I turned, my heart pounding in my chest, and there he stood. The man in the black coat and hat, his eyes piercing and cold. "Welcome to Cold Stone Creamery," I said, my voice shaking. He didn't respond. He simply walked in, the door swinging shut behind him. The other customers in the restaurant seemed oblivious to his presence, lost in their own conversations. I prepared his order, a scoop of vanilla in a plain waffle cone, just as he had ordered before. But this time, I couldn't bring myself to smile. I couldn't pretend that everything was normal. As I handed him the cone, he took it with his gloved hand, and his cold eyes bore into mine. "I've come back for more," he said, his voice sending shivers down my spine. I watched in horror as he took a slow, deliberate lick of the ice cream. It was as if he were savoring it, relishing every moment. And then, with a cold, malevolent smile, he dropped the cone onto the floor, the ice cream splattering across the tiles. The other customers finally seemed to notice him, their faces contorted in fear. But before anyone could react, he turned and walked out of the restaurant, disappearing into the night. I was left standing there, my heart pounding, my hands trembling. The restaurant was in chaos once again, and the other customers were in a state of shock. It was as if the man had brought with him a storm of darkness, a whirlwind of fear and dread. The police were called once more, but they found no trace of the man. He had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only a sense of impending doom. Sarah and I couldn't take it anymore. We quit our jobs at Cold Stone Creamery, unable to bear the weight of the terror that had settled over the restaurant. We moved on with our lives, but the memory of that man, that cold, malevolent presence, haunted our dreams. To this day, I can't pass by a cold Stone Creamery without feeling a shiver run down my spine. The restaurant may have reopened, and customers may come and go, but I know that somewhere out there, the man in the black coat and hat still lingers, his cold smile etched into my nightmares, a chilling reminder of the horrors that can lurk in the most unexpected places.